was wandering in the forest edge to amuse myself when I realized I got totally lost. What's that sound? All of a sudden, a blur of golden and black spots leaped towards me. I'm doomed! Guys, I'm here in Africa on vacation to support my parents with their new reality show. Oh, duty calls. See you later, Moaz. Hi, I'm Vivian, an influencer from Aachen, Germany. My mom and dad are actors, which does have some perks. They gave me everything I wanted. Branded clothes, supercars, fancy phones. Except for one thing. Their time. Christmas, birthdays, graduation ceremony. Whatever the occasion, they missed it. My friends thought I had the perfect life, but my only wish was to be picked up at school by my parents once. I was hoping this trip would be different, but it seems nothing has changed. They seem to have forgotten about their daughter's presence. Duh. That's why I always had to rely on strangers' attention like this. Being here alone was so boring, so I decided to amuse myself by live streaming in the forest edge. Hey viewers! Oh crumbs, I only have one signal bar. Hang on. Looks like I wandered further than I meant to. No worries. What's that sound? All of a sudden, a blur of golden and black spots leaped towards me. I'm doomed! I still haven't eaten caviar pizza, and I still don't own a Gucci bag in every color! I haven't even become prom queen! I can't die! Wait, were my eyes deceiving me? Or was the leopard really knocked out by some jungle guy swinging on a vine? Oh boy, he sure does resemble Tarzan.
Beautiful!
Thank you? I turned to reach for my phone and realized it had fallen on the ground, and I was still live streaming. Viewers were bombarding me with sad and wow face emojis and flooding my comments with concerned messages. Then my parents and the crew showed up. Turns out this guy had been lost in the jungle since he was a little boy, and he was raised by monkeys. His parents had passed away by now. I know, but I got lost too. Then, Mom and Dad announced that they'd bring this jungle boy home under the guise of being charitable. Pfft, wasn't it for publicity? They named him Taz and gave him a makeover. Well, at least they tried to. All the suits he tried on tore, as he was way too muscly. It took an entire box of candy bars to make him agree to shave, and he still refused to cut his hair. He could only speak a limited number of words and sentences he remembered from being a kid, so Mom and Dad had to hire a tutor to teach him to read and write, which was me. He hated living in the house, and after several occasions where he climbed out of the window and slept in the garden, my parents built him an amazing jungle zone room. But then he kept me awake all night with his incessant ape howling noises. My parents even brought him to their shows, and all they talked about every day was Taz this, Taz that, which made me feel like an outsider. This was really hard for me, but I tried to be patient. Then one day, my parents told me the worst news ever.
Taz is going to come to school with you as your bodyguard. We don't have time to do it. At least this time we'll know you'll be safe.
What? But I don't need a bodyguard! Especially not one that can't even speak properly. Taz knows basic conversation now. I don't see the problem. So the next day, Taz started to stick to me. I set some ground rules. He had to stay 10 feet away from me at all times, and he wasn't allowed to mutter a single word to me. Thankfully, Mia, my bestie, was there to provide some normality to the freak show that was currently my life. Coffee for the hottie.
Don't drink. Me test first. Taz say safe for V to drink.
Yummy! Then I quickly explained everything to her. He's kinda hot, in a wild way. Don't you dare say that again! But later, despite my rules, Taz stuck to me like glue.
Parents told Taz must guard V.
Worst of all, the other students treated him like a celebrity. They took his photo, asked him dumb questions which caused traffic congestion in the hall. He immediately ran up the wall like a ninja to escape the crowd, making them even more excited and chase after him. That night, I checked my Instagram and was excited to see that I was only 2K followers away from 500K. Yahoo! Then an account caught my eye. That dude even has a fan page? For real? He stole my parents, my school popularity, and now he's trying to steal my followers too? What's with these crazy people? Why are they all so obsessed with him? At least there still exists a normal person, and handsome as well. Yeah, my Henry. I've secretly liked him for years, but even this sassy Instagram queen has a weakness. Just looking at him made my legs shake, so I admired him in secret. The next day, I was sneakily putting letters and gifts on Henry's desk when Taz interrupted.
Why we do that?
Ugh, it's for love. When you really like someone, you show them with romantic gestures. Okay, it's like giving your last morsel of food to someone even though you're extremely hungry. Got it? Seeing as Taz was huge, it was no surprise he was soon asked to join the basketball team. Guess who else was on it? Yep, Henry. So I've got an idea. Maybe Taz was my way of getting closer to him. I asked Taz to give Henry a soda, but Taz accidentally shook it too hard. So when Henry opened it, he got totally soaked. Then I told Taz to support Henry during the match, but Taz was so into the game that he accidentally pushed Henry's pants down, revealing his Hello Kitty underwear. Everyone laughed at him and he was so humiliated that he ran off the court. After the match, Taz came to me saying he was sorry, then continued,
Taz not like Henry.
I decided it was better to separate Taz and Henry before he ruined everything. All right, so I think it's best if you quit basketball.
But Taz likes basketball.
No big deal. I can ask my parents to build you a private basketball court and play with you? But from now on, you'll have to listen to me.
The best ape ever!
Shh, stop saying silly things. Taz seemed so grateful for his new basketball court that he started caring about me more. He brought me an overload of fresh fruit, a bit too fresh, and checked it on whenever I was sad. I had just been at ease for a while before Taz was messing around again. I had a movie premiere to attend and was about to change into my stunning Versace dress, only to discover it had been swapped for a dress made from actual leaves.
Green! Beautiful, she said.
Luckily, I managed to arrange another dress just in time. But at the premiere, when the press interviewed me, Taz appeared.
The best ape ever!
I was so embarrassed. I turned bright red and forgot my words. Thanks to Taz, I became a netizen laughingstock. I swear that I would pay this back, and my chance finally came. The audience loved Taz, but big crowds freaked him out, and he always tried to find a way to hide. During one press conference, I saw him run off frightened, so I followed him. Hey Taz, is there a place that will make you feel better? I can take you there.
We take Taz to jungle? Taz happy.
So I took him to the Dower Forest. As soon as we got there, Taz's mood changed. He ran wild and then stopped at a large oak tree.
V? Why letters?
This is the bridegroom's oak tree. Local people like to leave love letters here. Then we sat down under the tree and Taz looked so upset.
Taz not like bright light and flashes.
That's okay. We can just chill here, right? Great. Seeing Taz leave the show on his own, then surely Mom and Dad wouldn't like him anymore. Only, when we returned home, my parents weren't furious with Taz, but with me.
Vivian, you should be setting a good example for Taz, not just inciting and taking him away from important events. Can you stop acting like a child and think before you act for once?
I shut myself in my room and I had a complete meltdown. Then I rang Mia to confide in her. Living with Taz is a nightmare. He has to leave. What do you mean? I'm going to find a way to kick him out. The next day at school, I was walking along the hallway when Henry appeared in front of me.
V, you have to convince Taft to rejoin the basketball team. We can't win the final without him. Please, I'll do anything you want.
Wow, seems like my Christmas gift came early. Anything you say? How about taking me to prom?
Actually, that's what I've always wanted to do. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
I was frozen. This was incredible! I guess my kick-out Taz plan would have to wait for now. So I humbled myself to convince him. As expected, with the help of Taz, the team won. Only neither he or Henry showed up to get their trophy. I went looking for them and found Taz pouncing on Henry. Taz, stop it! But he was too full off rage to listen to me, so I had to jump between them.
He is completely out of control. You can forget about the prom then.
This is all your fault. You stole everything from me since the day you were back from that freaky jungle, and now you've beaten up my crush. All you've done is ruin my life. Why can't you just give me alone? Then he left. For real. This felt great, as I'd finally got rid of the thorn in my eye. Only, I couldn't shake away this empty feeling. Scrolling through my old comments didn't help, and neither did live streaming. I suddenly realized I missed the special way Taz cared about me. And when with him, I didn't have to hide or force myself to be anything other than me. I aimlessly wandered to Dodur Forest and stopped at the oak tree. A letter poking out of the hole caught my eye. I picked it up and recognized it was Taz's try-to-be-neat but scribbled handwriting.
Henry liar. He's with Mia.
My head was still spinning when my phone went crazy. I checked and saw my inbox was full of rude comments. Then I soon found the viral audio. Living with Taz is a nightmare. He has to leave. I'm going to find a way to kick him out. I was literally petrified for a few seconds, while netizens kept going crazy saying I was so ungrateful to Taz even after he'd saved my life. How could she? I immediately went to Mia's house to confront her about it. It was you, the only one I confided my story. Oh well, Miss Obvious. It was me. So what? Henry's mine, not yours. He just told you what you wanted to hear to get Taz back on the team. But that moron overheard Henry talking to me and dared to hurt him. You! Hi, talk about the jungle, dud. Total simp and stupid. I told him you'd love a leaf dress and he totally bought it. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to get my hair done for a date with Henry. Mwah. I felt like an elephant had slapped right on the face. So Taz was right. Back home, I gloomily pulled out Taz's letter. But hold on, there's still another part. Why didn't I realize it sooner? Right then, my parents arrived home. They'd heard that audio and were absolutely furious.
It's your fault Taz ran away. Now we have to compensate for the contracts of the shows he was supposed to be in. You don't care about anyone! Says you! All you do is give me money and that's it. You're never there when I need you. Never! Even Taz cares about me more than you both do. Then I ran off right away. I kept going until I ended up under this bridge. Then I saw him. He was playing with some stray cats and dogs. I immediately ran to hug him and started apologizing, but he pointed behind me and said, "Bad guys, bad guys." I turned around to see two figures headed this way. I dragged Taz into the corner and we watched them bundle the cats and dogs into sacks. They were definitely up to no good, so I used my phone to record them, but...
What you aiming at, kids?
I woke up feeling dizzy to realize that we were both tied up in an abandoned house.
Still no reply from her parents. They better pay up, or else.
You're wasting your time. They don't care about me. The thieves ignored me and kept calling and calling, but still no answer. That was it. I was gonna die here. We. Then, when it was pitch black out there, the door barged open and walked in Mom and Dad with a bag of money. As the thieves counted the money, Dad tried dialing the police, but one of them came throwing his phone right away and beat him up.
Say goodbye to your daughter.
Please don't hurt her. Hurt me instead. This really shocked me, as I'd only ever seen other people bowing to my parents before, not the other way around. The one guy raised a plank of wood to hit me, but right at this time, Taz leaped free and knocked them out cold. The police arrived soon after that and arrested the thieves. Mom and Dad immediately rushed to me. Are you okay, sweetie? We were worried sick when you were nowhere to be seen, and we're sorry for making you feel unwanted.
We never had money growing up and struggled a lot. That's why we wanted a different life for you. We kept working and thought giving you money over our time was the best way to show our love, but we were wrong.
Mom, Dad, what I really need from you is your presence. It's more precious than anything. And thank you for everything.
Okay, I protect V. I protect animals too.
Now I've realized what I needed the most. It was to always stay true to myself, like this dummy. I didn't want to be some fancy influencer anymore. Instead, Taz inspired me to use my reputation to establish an organization to care for abandoned animals. As for my dear ex-best friend and dear ex-crush, meh, they didn't matter to me anymore. 'Cause you know what? The sweetest revenge is to live a fabulous life. At the end of the prom, I asked Taz about the note. Taz, did you write this?
I'm glad you asked. I practiced many times to say those words. Now time to say officially. I like you, V. You're my best ape ever.
So, in the first part of my story, my parents set me up on some blind dates. First, there was Trent, who ended up being gay, so that didn't work out. And then I met Corey, who wasn't far from being called my worst enemy. We hated each other, but still, he made me go on dates with him. And then it turned out he was also gay, and that Trent was actually his ex. Corey begged me to help him get Trent back. So let's see how Trent will react to this. I decided to casually ask Trent about his past relationships and stuff, to see if he'd bring Corey up. He said he'd been so badly betrayed by his ex and that he still hadn't forgiven him for it. Clearly, he was talking about Corey. I didn't know what to do. It was killing me to see how miserable they both were. Seeing how Corey desperately wanted Trent back made me realize that he had changed. If he was given one more chance, he would never risk losing Trent a second time. So I decided to help them get back together. I told Corey about it first, and I have never seen him look so happy. And after that, we started getting on pretty well, because we didn't have to pretend to be dating anymore. We could just be ourselves. And guess what? He's not actually that bad. In fact, he was just like me, having to put up with his parents setting him up on stupid dates. He even told my parents that I was such an amazing girl. And after that, my parents started to respect me more. The only thing was, I couldn't let Trent know about my plan. In fact, Trent didn't even know that Corey and I knew each other. But from the way Trent spoke about Corey, I knew he still had feelings for him too. So all I had to do was set up a date for them and let fate handle the rest. I asked Trent to meet me for dinner and arranged with Corey to secretly show up later. But as soon as Trent saw Corey, his face went bright red, and within a second flat, he was furious. He stood up and started yelling at us both and even pushed Corey out of the way as he stormed out. Every single person in the restaurant was staring at us, and I even heard some old couple whispering that I was clearly two-timing these guys, and I'd just been caught, and how embarrassing that was. Trent was really mad at me after that, so I had to try and get him to forgive me, and at the same time, try and persuade him to give it another go with Corey. I knew that Trent had a sweet tooth, so I started making cupcakes and cookies and leaving them on his doorstep. He never answered the door no matter how many times I knocked, and one time I left a 3-tiered chocolate cake at his door, and I overheard his neighbors talking. One of them said, "Oh, when will she stop? What a desperate gold digger." And then the other looked at me and started shaking her head. She said, "She clearly has no dignity. What kind of girl chases a boy like that?" I was so embarrassed. I realized how needy I must have looked, so I ran back to my car, but before I got in, Trent came running after me. He had heard the neighbors too, and he'd realized how hard I'd been trying. He said to me, "Crystal, stop it already. You keep trying to fix things that were never your fault to begin with." Well, at least he'd spoken to me again. I told him I was sorry, and I just missed hanging out with him. So he said he forgave me, but there was one more thing he wanted. I replied to him with the biggest smile on my face. "Sure, anything for you, Trent. I'm all yours for today." "Okay then, let's go to the theme park. It's been a while, and I need something to relieve all this stress," he said. I'm pretty sure I started to sweat a little upon hearing that because I'm literally petrified of heights. So we went there and went on all the rides that Trent wanted to, and I had to close my eyes the whole time and spent most of the day clinging onto him out of fear. But Trent seemed to have a great time, and I was just glad to make him happy again. That was all that mattered. After that day, I was able to bring up Corey again, and I told him that he didn't have to take him back, but maybe he could just open his heart a little and give Corey a chance to explain himself. He reluctantly agreed, just so that I'd stop going on and on about it. And he did give him a chance. Well, not really a chance, but he did keep the gifts Corey sent instead of sending them right back. And he stopped blocking his number. They even started talking again. Anytime Trent replied to Corey, Corey would call me and tell me, and he'd be so excited. And they even met up to have a serious chat about what had happened. Now there's no more bad blood between them, and all that was left to do was for Corey to make a move to win Trent back. Corey started to shower Trent in love. He even bought him an annual pass to the theme park and backstage passes to his favorite singer. But still, Trent wouldn't budge. He was being nice to Corey, but he didn't seem to want to date him again, which was so weird. What was going on? Had Trent met another guy already? One day, I met up with Trent to talk over a drink. I jokingly asked him, "Hey, are you seeing another guy? What about Corey? I mean, I know he hurt you in the past, but he's changed now. And honestly, you two were miserable before. Now that he's back in your life, you seem so much happier." I waited for him to reply, but he just stared at me, which was really weird, and it made me blush. Had I just stepped out of line? I said to him, "Well then, come on, spill the beans. Who is he?" Then he smirked and downed his drink, and he said, "The reason I'm so much happier is because, yes, I have met someone." "I knew it!" I interrupted. Then I realized he wasn't finished speaking. He continued, "But it's not a guy. It's a girl, and she's the reason why I can't be with Corey again. She made me realize that I'm actually bisexual." And I was surprised. I mean, I really loved Corey, So this girl kind of came out of nowhere and has blown me away with how incredible she is. I couldn't believe it. Oh my God, who is she? I said, laughing. And then he went bright red and said, Crystal, come on. It's you. Duh. What? I was too shocked to even reply. My heart was beating so fast. Trent liked me? Honestly, I was so confused. I mean, Trent was gay. Why would he like me? I felt so awkward and I could feel his eyes on me. I knew he was waiting for me to say something. I looked up for a second and our eyes met, and the tension in the air was so intense. I just couldn't stand it. I made up an excuse, saying I felt tired and that I needed to go home. Trent looked a bit upset, but still offered to drive me home. I turned him down, though, and said I'd take an Uber. I just needed some alone time. I couldn't stop thinking about what he'd said. It actually made sense. We had so much fun together, but because I'd known he was gay, I'd never really looked at him as boyfriend material. But what if he wasn't gay? I mean, could we be together? The more I thought about it, the more I realized I liked him too. But I had to forget about those feelings because what about Corey? I couldn't just steal the love of his life like that. He'd be heartbroken. I didn't sleep a wink that night. All kinds of questions constantly popped up in my head. The next day, Trent texted me first, asking, "Did you sleep well last night? I hope what I said last night didn't keep you up all night," with a smiley face. I replied, "Actually, I was awake the whole night. I've thought a lot about my feelings, but Trent, I don't want to hurt Corey. We can't do this." He then replied, "Don't think too much. That doesn't matter. Just answer this one question. Do you have feelings for me? Just say yes or no." I don't know what was going through my mind, but at that moment, I guess I was just tired of things being so complicated. So I typed yes, then hit send. Okay, so now Trent knew I had feelings for him too, and he sounded so happy. He said I shouldn't worry and that we could work this out as long as our feelings were mutual. A few days later, Trent said he'd meet up with Corey to talk to him. I was way too anxious to ask Trent how it went, but then at midnight, Corey called me. I was terrified to answer. I knew he would yell at me, but to my complete surprise, he didn't. He sounded calm and said Trent had told him everything and that if I truly had feelings for him, I should go for it. He said, "I've spent years away from the one I love, and I don't want the same thing to happen to you and Trent. It's too painful. You both deserve to be happy. Plus, you helped me so much. Thanks to you, I managed to clear things up with Trent, and just having him back in my life, even as a friend, is good enough for me. I'll find someone else, and it'll make me so happy to know you two are happy." I was so touched by what he said, I couldn't even respond. I just started crying and told him he'd definitely meet someone amazing soon. Even he sounded choked up, but he tried to hide it by laughing and calling me a crybaby. Now that I had his support, I decided to give it a go with Trent. We went on a date, and it was so fun. Seeing as it wasn't our first time hanging out, we were so comfortable around each other. And now that I knew he was interested in me, I noticed how much he gave me butterflies. It was amazing. Now we're officially a couple. Turns out my parents are pretty good at playing Cupid, right?
Hi everyone, Jack here. I'm 17 and I live with my mom, dad, and sis. We're pretty much a normal family. I suppose I do okay at school. I'm not super popular or anything, as I am a little on the shy side, but I'm not unpopular either. I'm really good at sports studies, and I definitely want to pursue this further when I go to college and stuff. Anyway, I want to tell you about my best friend Danny, and the girl of my dreams, Amy. I first met Danny at the age of 10. We were both at the local pool, and back then, I was energetic and, well, I did a lot of stuff without thinking it through. I started splashing about in the pool, and soon I realized I couldn't put my feet on the ground. I couldn't swim, so yeah, this was bad. I began to panic and tried shouting out for help, but a load of water ended up in my mouth. Then Danny appeared and helped me over to the shallow end. Turns out he was new to town and was starting at the same school that I went to. After that, we became best friends. Danny's this effortlessly cool, stylish, and handsome guy. He was always more popular than me, and all the girls liked him, but still, he chose to be friends with me. Being around him was great fun. We hung out, played football, and goofed around. There's this girl from school called Amy. She's popular and beautiful. She always wears these pretty dresses, and well, she just stands out. Problem is, I wasn't the only one to notice this. Practically every boy at school had a crush on her. I didn't think I stood a chance with her, but then the school picnic happened. I ended up in the same group as her, so I went over to her and tried to talk. I felt so nervous that I couldn't get any words out. Then I tripped over a branch and accidentally fell into her arms. In that moment, I imagined we looked into each other's eyes and she could see how much I liked her. Then we'd kiss and date and marry and live happily ever after. But yeah, that wasn't reality. In real life, I was stiff as a log and was so embarrassed. I quickly snapped out of it, got up and muttered out, "Sorry." She giggled and said, "No problem. I hope you didn't hurt yourself." Amazingly, we started chatting after that. Things quickly changed between Amy and me. We talked a lot on Messenger, and I often sat with her at lunch. She was so fun to be around, and I loved spending time with her. Then we started dating. I often had to pinch myself to convince myself that yes, I really was dating the most beautiful girl in school. We both loved nature, so we often spent our weekends going for walks and exploring new places. Our first kiss happened in my room. We were meant to be working on our science project, but I couldn't stop staring at her. She was just so beautiful. So I leaned over and kissed her. It was like fireworks were going off around us. Talk about magical. After that, we became pretty much inseparable. I often went out to restaurants with her family, and she regularly came over for dinner with mine. Things were amazing. She was my princess. With her around, I felt so happy, and I couldn't imagine my life without her in it. Then one night, she texted me, "I love you." This made me smile, and I sent back, "I love you too, Amy." Then, to my surprise, she messaged back, "What is love anyway?" I didn't understand what she meant, but before I could send another message asking this, she sent me a video of her with Danny, my best friend Danny. Then she messaged me, "This is what real love looks like." Couldn't believe what I just saw. I immediately threw my phone across the room. I was so heartbroken. How could she do this to me? And with my best friend? I cried days and nights. It was horrible. I felt like I'd never be happy again. I rarely cry, so my family was really worried and tried every way to console me, but nothing they said or did could cheer me up. Worse still, I was dreading going back to school and having to see them together. They didn't make it easy for me. As soon as I got to my locker, I saw them there, kissing. Word got around that they were very much in love. So much for her ever loving me. It hurt so much. Danny didn't seem to bother that he'd hurt me. That's the problem with Danny. He doesn't think sometimes. He just goes after what he wants without a care for who he stomps on in the process. Plus, we weren't as close as before anymore. Ever since high school started, he'd been hanging out with some bad guy. I told him that Amy was a liar and that she would soon go off him, but he just shrugged and said, "Whatever." I know you're probably wondering why I stayed friends with Danny after what he did. I guess I'm too nice, but I just couldn't break our 7-year relationship over this. It was bad enough I'd lost the love of my life. I couldn't afford to lose my best friend too. Yes, I felt betrayed and angry, but Amy had made her choice, and it wasn't me. Then one night I was on my way home on the metro. The only free seat was next to Amy, so I sat down next to her. At first it was awkward, and neither of us spoke. Then I asked her, "Why did you cheat on me?" She replied, "Well, Danny's the richest, most popular, and best-looking guy in school. I only used you to get closer to him." This was horrible to hear. I was so mad that I chose to stand for the rest of the journey back. The next day, I tried telling Danny what Amy had said. He told me I was just being jealous, shoved me, and yelled at me that I needed to stop being so bitter. We didn't talk for 2 weeks after that. I felt so lonely, but it turns out neither Danny nor Amy were the people I thought they were. Danny tried calling, but I ignored his calls. He also sent me some lame apology messages, but I didn't reply. Then one day, he showed up on my doorstep, gave me chocolate, and asked me to go for a walk in the woods with him. I took my GoPro with me. As I said before, I love nature. I always film the scenery on my walks. I asked him if he truly loved Amy. And to my surprise, he said that girls were like chewing gum. You had to chew till the end and then spit them out. He said he would use Amy one last time, then finish with her, then let his friends have her. Then he would move to another city and do it all over again. This was shocking to hear. I knew he could be reckless, but I didn't think the boy who saved my life when we were 10 was capable of being so cruel. I told him I never wanted to talk to him again, and I stormed off. My GoPro had been recording the whole time, so it was about time I took revenge on my shattered heart, wasn't it? Thing is, as mean as Amy has been, I still care about her. I thought about it a lot, and eventually decided that she deserved to know the truth, so I sent her the recording. Even after seeing it, she made out I'd edited it to make Danny sound bad, as I was just jealous. I knew that her parents thought she was so sweet and innocent, so I told her that if she didn't split up with Danny, I'd send them the video clip. She tried to resist at first, but soon she gave up and begged me not to show it to them. I later found out that she'd continued to see Danny in secret for weeks after that, but eventually, she saw the dark side to him. She even came up to me at school and thanked me for trying to help her, and apologized for hurting me. I didn't try to save her from Danny because I was feeling sympathetic toward her or anything like that. Instead, I believe that witnessing a crime is as bad as committing it. I guess that as mean as Amy had been to me, I didn't want to see her hurt, especially not by that jerk. Actually, after that, she's even reached out to me once and asked me to be her boyfriend again. But of course, I wasn't a fool. A leopard can't change its spots, so I made it clear to her that my answer was and would always be no, and that we should just stay friends. While me and Danny, we aren't friends anymore. I have other friends, but it's hard, as a part of me does still miss him, but I don't like the person he's become. Thanks for listening to my story. I hope that you guys don't go through what I did, but if you do, I hope you find the strength to do the right thing, however hard this may be.
Hi, I'm Olive, and at the young age of just 23, I've decided I'm totally done with love. Why, you ask? Well, because all men are jerks, liars, and fraudsters. They're like magpies. They're always looking for something new and shiny to come along. So, your boyfriend is different? Yeah, whatever. I've heard it all before. I've believed it all before, too. Trust me. But as much as it sucks to hear that all guys are the same, I'll tell you why. It all began back in high school when I had a massive crush on this boy called Xavier. He was so dreamy, handsome, and talented. We bonded over our love for music, and we were in the same school choir together. Every musician has a muse, right? I believed that I was Xavier's only muse, and no one could replace me. In my eyes, he could do nothing wrong. Being around him filled me with butterflies, and I couldn't wait to go to college with him and share my life with him. But then, I caught him in the music room, kissing some other girl. I felt so broken and ran off. I just didn't understand how a boy who I thought cared about me could hurt me so badly. I turned into a zombie version of myself. I could barely eat anything, and I refused to go to school as there's no way I could face seeing him with her. In the end, my mom was so concerned about me that she let me change schools. The problem was that it might have been a new school, but it was still full of jerky guys. I started dating this boy called Justin, but then he broke up with me for my friend Rosie. I had to endure sitting alone in the canteen and watching them feed each other yogurt. Gross. I thought that going to college would change my bad luck with guys and that they'd be more grown up about relationships. But no, turns out my first college boyfriend, Thomas, was two-timing me the whole time. I was clearly a magnet for bad guys, so I decided to use it to my advantage. In fact, their bad behavior is so predictable that I've managed to build a career on it. So after I graduated from college with a degree in business administration, I convinced my family to lend me money so I could open up my love trap business. Do you want to find out if your boyfriend's loyal or not? Well, my business can help with that. Hire me, and I can tell you if you're wasting your time with that charming guy or if he's one in a zillion. This isn't an investigation service or your regular kind of honey trap company. No, Instead, I help my clients determine if their partner is faithful or not, even before he actually has an affair with someone. Why waste your time and effort with a man who has a wandering eye? It's simple, really. If your partner likes tall brunettes, I'll send a beautiful girl fitting this description over to the place he'll be at. Naturally, I have different service packages to choose from to suit all budgets. For instance, level 1 is a brief encounter in a chosen location, while level 3 ups the stakes. Trust me, few guys can resist a super sexy woman. If your boyfriend passed our challenges, congratulations. But if he didn't, then we'd have pictures, videos, and messages to back it up. Of course, my client's discretion was the utmost importance to me. So, if questioned, then my girls would deny being hired, and who by? And they'd never go beyond the limits or allow themselves to develop feelings for the guy. As crazy as it sounds, I was doing really well with this job. Business was booming, and although seeing my clients burst into tears when I handed them pictures of their guy flirting with one of my girls wasn't fun, exposing a cheater made me feel satisfied. Then everything changed when Amy showed up at my office. She seemed like any normal client at first. She loved her boyfriend, but she just wasn't fully sure if she could trust him. A normal, boring case. At least I thought it was until I opened up the folder with the information about her boyfriend. There, staring back at me, was a picture of Xavier. Whoa, I wasn't expecting that. Still, I kept my cool, smiled sweetly at Amy, and said, "Leave it to me." As if I was going to turn down this job and a large sum of money just because I had history with Xavier. Amy didn't know that, and she didn't need to. I'd send another girl along, catch him out, then voila, Amy would see what a jerk he was. Only that evening, I poured myself a glass of wine and looked through his folder. Geez, I'd forgotten just how handsome he was. By my third glass of wine, I decided that no one knew Xavier better than me. Therefore, I needed to use myself as bait and catch him out. The next evening, I put on my favorite dress and I went to the bar Amy said he'd be at. There he was, sitting at the bar and flirting with the pretty bartender. Some things never change. Then he turned and saw me. He looked shocked and said, "Olive, is that you?" "Oh, hi, Xavier," I smiled bitterly. "The last time I saw you, weren't you having fun with your new muse in the music room?" He looked confused and said he didn't understand what I was talking about, so I gave him a refresher. I thought he'd be ashamed that I caught him out as a cheater, but then he responded, "No, you've got the wrong idea. We were just practicing for the school play when she tried to kiss me all of the sudden. I bet you didn't stay until the next moment to see me push her away and tell her I already had my girlfriend. You're my one and only Olive, my muse." Suddenly, I felt so stupid that I didn't ask him directly that day, and just ran away without a word. If I had, then I could have had my dream life with him, and never had to experience those jerk guys. As I looked into his dreamy eyes, I realized that I still loved him, and I knew he loved me too. That Amy girl wasn't right for him. So when he asked me to go back to a hotel room with him, I didn't think twice about saying yes. After that, we started dating, and it felt good being able to trust a guy again. He was always spoiling me with romantic weekend trips and taking me out to expensive restaurants. But then one night, when I was with him at a hotel, and he was out of the room, his phone beeped, and I saw a message from Amy pop up. So when he returned, I used this as my chance to ask him, "Who's Amy?" He touched my hand and told me that she was just some silly girl he was pretending to date so her father's company would hire him for a big job. He promised that after his business contract ended, he wouldn't talk to her again. I'd failed to trust Xavier once before, and I wasn't about to do it again. Also, I need to help him with his business. So when Amy came to my office, I put on a smile and said, "Congrats, Xavier's one of the good guys." "Is that right?" She raised an eyebrow. Then she threw a pile of photos on the table between us. There were pictures of me and Xavier at the bar, at the mall, on our recent short trip away, and in a hotel foyer. Talk about a shocker. It turns out Amy wasn't as naive as I thought she was. She scowled at me and said, "Does your place even have rules for going to hotels with the customer's boyfriend to challenge him? Prepare yourself to go to courts, fraudsters." She left, leaving me trembling with fear. I was about to lose my business, and it was all my own fault. But at least I still had Xavier, the love of my life, right? I called him up in tears and expected him to comfort me. Instead, he yelled out, "You ruined it all, you loser! How dare you let Amy know about your embarrassing affair? Do you really think I'd leave a good girl like Amy for someone awful like you? Prepare for the trial, since my testimony will put you at a disadvantage." Now, I have a ruined career and a dented pride. I'm tired and exhausted, and the last remaining belief in love I had has been lost forever. But worse still, I don't trust myself. I hate the fact that I fell for Xavier's charms not once, but twice. But if I manage to get through this lawsuit without losing everything, then I want to start a new business. I don't want to be bitter forever. Instead, I want to do something with my life. Something that doesn't involve love, heartbreak, or anything in between, as I'm keeping my heart a no-go zone from now on.
Hey, I'm Millie. I'm 14, and I have the biggest crush on my older brother's best friend, Jason. When my brother said Jason and his other friend were staying over that weekend, I was super excited. Things got even better when my parents planned a last-minute trip away, and our cool Aunt Cheryl came to stay with us. We both knew that she'd be too busy binge-watching her fave soap opera to care about what we did. That's why she's the coolest aunt. So I decided to also throw a slumber party, and I invited my two best girlfriends, Jane and Rosie, over. My plan was that we could order pizza and ask my brother and his friends to join, so I'd have a chance to hang out with Jason. I knew they'd say yes. I mean, when did boys ever turn down pizza? After we all ate loads of pizza, we watched scary movies together and played games. It was really fun. So fun, in fact, that even my usually moody brother couldn't stop laughing. I wore my cutest pajamas and was extra nice to Jason, making sure he always had a drink and stuff. We played 2 truths and 1 lie, and the boys lost, so we made them give up the mattresses in my brother's room for us to sleep on, as sharing my bed with 2 friends was kinda uncomfortable. The boys had to carry the mattress to my room and make the bed for us. It felt so good to be able to have one up on my brother and boss him around. Rosie and I got into my bed, and Jane claimed the mattress, as she tossed and turned loads in her sleep. For fun, we ordered the boys around a little more. I made them check the room for spiders and to take the trash downstairs. Then, Jason turned off the light for us and said goodnight before they went back to their room. That was so sweet. We chatted for a bit. Then Jane said she felt left out, so she crawled into my bed. It was too cramped for me to sleep, but that didn't seem to stop the others from drifting off. I kept thinking about Jason and how I was sure he'd been looking at me as he turned the light off. I went downstairs to get myself a glass of water, and on the way back to my room, I heard noises coming from my brother's room. I listened outside of the door. They were playing truth or dare of some sort. I heard them teasing Jason about liking one of us, and said that the next dare would be to sneak into the girl's room. Worried that they'd walk out and see me, I quickly ran back to my room. I didn't even have time to climb into my bed, so I threw myself onto the mattress and laid still. Then, a while later, I heard footsteps. It must be Jason. His shadow got closer to me, and it felt like he was leaning down. And then, he kissed me! OMG! I tried my best to pretend like I was asleep. Then, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I kissed him back. He gently stroked my hair, then left. I couldn't believe it! He liked me too? And that was my first kiss ever! The next morning, I woke up early, did my hair, put on a pretty dress, and made pancakes for breakfast. I made one in a heart shape for Jason, which I set up on the table. But when everyone came downstairs, my brother took that heart-shaped pancake and gave it to Jane before I could do anything. Did he like my best friend? Ew, no way! After everyone left, I immediately told my brother he couldn't like my friend, but he told me that she liked him too. He said he knew I liked Jason, so we should join forces and help each other out. That kinda sounded like a sweet deal, so I agreed. My brother set up a movie date for Jason and me by saying it's just a normal weekend hangout. Then he bailed out last minute. The date was perfect. I accidentally touched Jason's hand when we both reached for the popcorn. I thought that this was it. It's time for me to talk to him frankly. So after the movie, we grabbed a drink and I said to him, I know you like me. Let's stop acting as if nothing happened. He looked confused and laughed. Then I went on more specifically. You know, that night you came into my room? But he kept looking really lost, saying that he didn't go into my room that night at all. Then his phone rang. It was Jane calling him. Her picture showed up on the screen. Why does he have her phone number? He picked up and told her he'd be over shortly. I immediately asked him about it. Then he stuttered, saying that actually, he and Jane had just started dating. They first met at my slumber party and had exchanged social media accounts and have been talking to each other nonstop ever since. He also said that they were thinking about how best to tell me and my brother about this. And thank you. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have met Jane. But what were you talking about before? Continue. Stunned, I quickly replied with, Gotcha! I was just kidding. It was a dumb dare. My brother dared me to prank you because I lost a game to him. I made my excuses and swiftly left after that. I felt completely mortified. When I arrived home, I threw a tantrum and told my brother everything, including the part about me overhearing them playing Truth or Dare and the kiss. He just sat there listening with his mouth wide open. And then things all came to light. They dared Jason to go into the girls' room and draw on our faces, but he refused, so he chose Truth instead. And he answered a question saying that out of all the girls, he liked Jane the most. After that, my brother felt uneasy. He was confident that Jane had eyes on him, too, so he pretended to go to the bathroom, and then he came into my room. And before he could stop himself, he kissed Jane, and she kissed him back. But turns out, it was me! I was the girl who was lying on the mattress! He then screamed at me. Why did you suddenly switch beds? While I screamed back, you stole my first kiss? This is so disgusting and awkward. We quickly calmed down and stopped yelling at each other because it's even too embarrassing to fight about. We then swore to keep this a secret till the day we die. And now we have 2 heartbroken siblings who have accidentally kissed each other in this household. Not to mention, from now on, we will have to watch our crushes being all lovey-dovey with our friends, too. This is a nightmare.
Hey guys, it's me, Milo. I'm back again to share the next part of my story with you. Firstly, here's a quick recap. So my ex Deanna cheated on me with some college doofus, and in doing so broke my heart. So I decided that if I couldn't be happy, then neither could anyone else. So, around Valentine's Day, I messed with other couples. One such prank led me to meet Vanessa. Then, I found myself falling for her. The problem is she has a boyfriend, and he's a jerk. And the even bigger problem is that I just found out that she's my ex's little sister. And there's a chance I may have told Vanessa some pretty harsh truths about her sister. But in my defense back then, I didn't realize they were siblings. At first, I had no idea how to deal with the situation, so I just decided to avoid everyone. If I saw Vanessa at school, then I darted around the corner into the restroom behind an overweight kid. You know, anything that meant I didn't have to face her. The problem was I found myself missing her too much. I felt like I couldn't live without her. So no matter the consequences, I had to do something now. So I walked up to her at lunch and told her I'd been avoiding her because I couldn't cope with seeing her so upset over her boyfriend. That didn't deserve her and it was wrong of him to hit her, and she should get out now while she still could. Then I told her I'd always be there for her, and hopefully as more than just friends. She seemed touched. She knew there were a lot of problems in their relationship too, but admitted she'd been in denial about it all. She held my hand and said that she had feelings for me too, but now we had to deal with her boyfriend first. Ugh, her boyfriend Kane. He was the short-tempered kind of guy who solves everything with a punch. He will never accept it if she breaks up with him. It would dent his pride too much, and probably result in him being violent toward her. While to be honest, I'm too much of a coward. I couldn't protect her in that case. If he knew she was breaking up with him to be with me, well, then that's the end for me. So I thought long and hard about this, and then, voila, I derived a master plan. If he couldn't handle Vanessa breaking up with him, then we'll make him break up with her. Wow, am I a genius or what? The next day, I told Vanessa the plan. It's simple. She just needs to intentionally look sloppy, stinky, and ugly in front of him so he would soon tire of her. When she first heard it, she wasn't impressed and said, "That's so embarrassing. I can't do that. No girl wants to look like a mess." I told her that she would only have to do it in front of him. Besides, he went to a different school to us, so she could still look like her usual pretty self in class. Eventually, she agreed to do it. And as I expected, just after a few weeks of playing ugly, Kane had enough and broke up with her. Vanessa came around to mine and excitedly told me the news. She'd gone to Kane's place without any makeup on, wearing some stained oversized shirt, her hair a mess, and she hadn't even brushed her teeth. Then, when he ended it with her, she pretended to cry. I couldn't believe this good girl could act pretty well too. Then, seizing the occasion, I asked her to be my girlfriend, and she of course said yes. Then we kissed, and well, talk about amazing. She was such a better kisser than her sister. We kept our relationship low-key at first. This worked for her. She didn't want to rub our relationship in Kane's face. And it worked for me as I didn't want Deanna to find out. Then, after a month of dating, she dropped the bomb. "I want you to meet my sister. She's in college and lives in another city, but she's currently home for vacation. I should officially introduce you to her first, since we don't know when she will leave again." I could have screamed out, but instead, I kept my cool and asked to see a picture of her. Then on seeing one, I feigned being shocked and said that this girl always picked on me during middle school, and I was still traumatized from it. That those were the darkest years of my life. I mean, I didn't actually know Deanna back in middle school, probably because she was a year older than me, but Vanessa didn't need to know this. Vanessa felt bad for me and said she didn't know that there was that side to her sister. She said it was true that Deanna was pretty cranky in middle school, but thought that was just puberty. She never realized she was actually a mean girl, especially not to a younger kid. By this point, I might as well have been cast in some soap opera as my performance was a class act. I must have looked so pathetic that she told me it's okay, and she'd not mention Deanna anymore until I felt comfortable about it. This solved my ex problem, for now, but it didn't solve the Kane problem, as he found out about Vanessa and me, and he wasn't happy. My guess is Kane must have stalked Vanessa and spotted us together. Then he followed me home, as that crazy dude showed up on my doorstep and yelled at me to stay away from her. Well, I couldn't blame him. No one on earth ever likes their ex's new partner. Not only did this crazy guy know where I lived, but now my sister Kayla also knew about my relationship with Vanessa. Since she's still bitter about the Valentine prank I pulled on her, recap, it involved her, her boyfriend, and a whole lot of duct tape. So it wasn't overly surprising when she smirked at me and said, "Just you wait and see. I haven't forgot about what you did to me on Valentine's, and now seems like the perfect time for revenge." I repeated her words in a mocking tone to annoy her, but to be honest, deep down in my gut, I did feel on the anxious side. She's just as crazy of a prankster as I am. Now, I always had to be on guard. After that, my sister and Kane seemed to take turns to ruin our dates. Geez, didn't they have anything better to do? One time I was kissing Vanessa out in the yard. Suddenly there was water pouring down from nowhere. We were completely soaked. I looked around and saw my sister standing on the second floor balcony, holding an empty bucket, and said, "Oops, I was just trying to water the flowers." Then on a movie date night, Kane showed up at the same film, sat in the row behind us, and kept on kicking the back of my seat, and even threw popcorn at me. Later, when I went home and checked the hood of my hoodie, there were all kinds of trash and enough popcorn for the next movie date. How childish. It was all trivial stuff, really, but it was getting annoying. Then, on our 2-month anniversary, I told Vanessa to dress up all nice, then I took her to this swanky Italian restaurant. The meal was amazing, until when I reached into my pocket and took out my wallet to pay. Then, to my horror, a picture of a bikini-wearing girl fell out of nowhere. I was so shocked and just froze in confusion. Vanessa looked so upset. I explained that I'd never seen that picture before in my life, and I had no idea who the girl was. Then the waiter showed up with the card machine. I clumsily opened my wallet, but none of my cards were there. I searched my pockets again in panic, but nothing, not even a penny. Bright red, I muttered out that I had no money on me. This was the worst moment of my life. I thought I was going to lose my girlfriend and have to pot wash. But then I heard arguing coming from outside. Me, Vanessa, and the waiter all stared out the window and saw my sister and Kane yelling at each other. We stepped outside and listened in on their conversation. Turns out my sister had taken all the cards out of my wallet so I wouldn't be able to pay. She's been peeking in from the window all night long and spying on us, just to wait and see my pathetic face as I found out that all of my cards have vanished into thin air. But then she was disappointed that it didn't go to plan, because I was busy explaining to Vanessa about some stupid photo instead. That's when she met eyes with some crazy guy who was standing next to her and laughing his ass off in satisfaction, which you can already tell who he was, the mastermind of that bikini photo prank. Kayla got annoyed and picked a fight with Kane because now she felt like her prank had been overlooked and she wasn't happy about it. It's kind of dumb, really. As if they weren't so proud and headstrong, they could have watched me miserably try to squirm my way out of the no cards and picture of another girl fiasco. Instead, they'd been caught red-handed setting me up. Vanessa pointed at Kane and said to the waiter, "He'll pay for our meal." Then she grabbed my arm and pulled me away. So yeah, we left my sister and Kane to their arguing, and I took Vanessa home. Then, a few days later, Kane sent me a message. It's amazing what delving into your past can bring up. I know all about you and Deanna. Set me up on a date with your sister or else I'll tell Vanessa everything. Dang it. Who would have thought after that stupid incident that crazy Kane guy would catch feelings for my evil little sister? In hot sweats, I replied that my sister already had a boyfriend. Unsurprisingly, Kane didn't care about this factor. He told me a time and a place and said my sister better be there else he wouldn't just tell Vanessa about Deanna. He'd also 100% ruin my life. OMG, what am I supposed to do now? Do I really have to set up a date for my little sister with a crazy guy like Kane? Oh well, she's not really sane either, but she's still my sister. But if I don't agree to help him, then who knows what could happen to me tomorrow? I mean, I don't want Vanessa to find out about Deanna, and I also don't want to end up a beaten up mess. I'm so torn. This is killing me.
Hi, I'm Izzy, and my grandparents brought me up. It's not that my parents weren't around at all, it's just that they worked in New York, and, well, they were workaholics, so I ended up staying with my grandparents. My sister, Beatrice, or B as we all call her, lived with my parents. I don't know why this was exactly. It just kinda happened. My parents visited every Christmas and occasionally during spring break, but not having them around was normal for me. Then one summer, my parents showed up with B and told me they were moving to town and we were all going to live together. At first, this was weird as I was so used to barely seeing them, but then I decided it could be good, right? But, well, living with a little sister was more complicated than I thought. It's kind of bothersome. In fact, B even pushed me, an average drama-free girl at school, into a bunch of nonsense scandals. B's a sweet kid, but she's on the shy side and she can be a bit clingy. Probably because she still needed some time to fit into this new place, so she followed me and clung on to me all day long. But I just didn't get why she had to copy everything I did. I wore ripped skinny jeans, so she bought the exact same pair. I wore glitter pink lip gloss, so she did too. I got a new phone for my birthday, and she begged our parents until they caved and gave her one too. That kinda sucked, as I'd waited for ages for a decent phone, and she got one just by nagging. She had her own bedroom, but each night she came into my room and made me tell her stories about everyone at school, as she said this would help her make new friends faster. We'd chat about school, boys, friends, girl stuff. Then she'd fall asleep in my room. She stayed here pretty much every night, so in the end, our parents bought us bunk beds. But she then went and bragged about everything I told her to her classmates, so they'd think she's cool, since she got to hang out with seniors and knew their stories. One time, she leaked out the secret that my best friend Lee had a crush on Paul, and she told her friends that I was surely gonna be spring queen at the next prom. What? I didn't even think about trying out for that. Never! I'm not interested in that kind of attention. And obviously, the rumors got out. Lee stormed up to me, yelling and all, saying she never wanted to be friends again. I tried to explain things to her, but she didn't listen. And for the rest of the day, every time I walked across the hallway, the popular girls would smirk at me and say things like, "Who do you think you are?" Like, seriously, as if you could be spring queen? I hated this. I just wanted to have a normal, quiet life at school. I didn't like this attention, nor did I have any longing to be spring queen. This made me so mad. So later in the afternoon, I stormed into B's classroom during recess, dragged her aside, and told her to stop ruining my life with her big mouth. I didn't have much time to talk to her about exactly what had happened because I had to return to class, but I made sure to make my point and threw her a dirty look before I left. She looked pretty scared. I stomped back to class, but my tantrum didn't last long because during English Lit, my teacher paired me on a group project with 2 of my friends and Andy, the cutest guy ever. This was the perfect excuse to use the group study time to organize a meetup at my house. The plan was set. I just needed to come home, put on my cutest outfit, and wait for them to come over. I was so nervous that I didn't really mind about the feud with my sister anymore. I excitedly told her about Andy coming over, and she helped me tidy up my room and braid my hair. They arrived, and studying didn't last long. Soon, we were watching movies and playing games. Then B suggested we play 7 Minutes in Heaven. That's so childish, but the others seemed up for it. Besides, I figured it could work in my favor with Andy. We spun the bottle to decide, and when it was Andy's turn, B asked to spin it for him. Then she winked over at me and Andy. Then, to my horror, the bottle pointed at her. What was that? Is she stealing my crush too? This little brat. She and Andy went into the closet, and after 7 excruciating minutes, they walked out looking all smiley. I was so mad, but I kept my cool until they left. Then I screamed at B that she was a horrible, sneaky girl and to stay away from me. It got so heated, Mom had to come and tell me to stop. I slammed my bedroom door shut and even put my dresser in front of it so B couldn't come in. The next day, she tried apologizing to me, but I ignored her. She even left a candy bar on my pillow, but I just chucked it in the trash. To make matters worse, Andy approached me at school and went on about the fun he'd had at mine and how cool B was. What? So, what exactly did those 2 do in the closet? This was awful. Then prom day came. I didn't have a date. Lee still wasn't talking to me, and trying to avoid B in my own house was draining. Then Lee called me up excitedly and told me Paul had asked her to prom. I was so happy for her, and we made up. She invited me over to get ready for prom at hers. I packed my dress, my makeup, but my eyebrow pencil was missing. I mumbled, "Ugh, B," as she must have taken mine again. I knew she was at swimming practice, so I went through her drawer to find my makeup stuff. Nothing. Then I spotted something under her pillow. It looked like the end of a black pencil. This must be it. I took it out, but it wasn't an eyebrow pencil, just a normal pen. It was in the middle of a notebook. So curious. I pulled it out. That's when I glimpsed my name on the open page. So I picked it up to see what it was. It's her diary. I read through the first few pages. She said she loved me very much and that she was happy that she finally got to live in the same house as me. I found a specific page that was a little ripped. It was the day I yelled at her. I saw tears dried out on her words. She wrote how she really thought I was very beautiful and would win the Spring Queen title, and how she just wanted to help me and Andy get together, so she suggested the 7 Minutes game. And she tried to aim the bottle at me, but it went wrong. And that when she was in the closet with Andy, she was only saying nice things about me to him. And she also found out that Andy had feelings for me. Also, she wrote that sleeping alone was so scary, but she didn't want to bother me anymore. She said she'd ruined everything and wished she could move back to her old house. I felt so guilty, and I just cried all the way to Lee's place and later told her everything. I was not in the mood for prom anymore, so even though everyone complimented me on my dress, I couldn't enjoy myself. Andy came forward and asked me to dance, but I couldn't quit thinking about B. I apologized to Andy for my bad mood, and he was so understanding. We ended up taking a walk outside, and I vented to him about how I'd misunderstood my sister. Then, suddenly, I spotted her with friends at the photo booth at the entrance. They looked like they were having so much fun, except for her. She looked so sad. I grabbed her arm from behind. She turned around, shocked, then quickly stepped back and went to leave, but I stopped her and told her I was sorry. I hugged her, and we both cried, and continuously said sorry to each other. Then I suddenly heard my name on the mic inside the venue. She then said, "Go, go! They must be crowning you as Spring Queen right now! Told you so!" Turns out I wasn't Spring Queen, but I did make prom court, which I guess is kinda cool. I was wrong to ever be mad at B. She never meant to cause any harm. I know that now. Later that evening, Lee and Paul came over and thanked B. as it was basically down to her that they were now together. Then Lee winked at Andy, who was standing next to me, and said, "You should also thank B, because it looks like we're having another couple here." Talk about awkward. So we both just shrugged it off and pretended not to understand what she meant. We spent the rest of the night dancing and having a great time. It felt so good to have my best friend and my little sis back in my life. I've now realized that having Bella with me all the time isn't so bad. Yes, she's annoying at times, but all she wanted was to have her big sis around. And I guess I have to admit that I like having my little sis around too. Hey guys, Stephanie here. I have a question for you. Promise to be honest, okay? Have you ever had a crush on one of your teachers? If yes, I guess you could somehow relate to my story. I'm going to tell you all about my super fine boyfriend, Joseph. I put so much effort into winning him over, but trust me, he was worth every second. So this all began last year when I was a sophomore at college, majoring in performing arts. When it came to boys my own age, talk about boring. I didn't pay much attention to them as they were so childish and honestly, they just annoyed me. If I had to choose between dating some immature jerk or staying single forever, there was no contest. One day, I was over at my bestie Susie's place. We've been friends since forever, and even though we now went to different colleges, we still met up loads. As we were eating Susie's delicious homemade burgers, we talked about college, outfits, boys, that kind of thing. That's when Susie told me all about the new professor at her college called Joseph. She described him as extremely handsome, tall, intelligent, sporty, and he owned a motorcycle. He sounded far too good to be true, so I convinced myself there must be a catch. Perhaps he had bad acne, or maybe he had a wife and 3 kids or something. He doesn't have acne, he's not married, and he looks like this. She held up her phone. On it was the image of a seriously hot guy. I grabbed the phone off her and scrolled through his social media pictures. Jeez, this guy was so fine. So what if I'd never met him? I knew I needed to make him mine. I needed a plan, so I begged Susie to help me out. She thought I was crazy, but hey, she'd been besties with me forever, so she knew I like to go all out on things. She snuck me into class with her. It was economics. Boring, but staring at Joseph was worth it, and his voice was so dreamy. I knew I couldn't just sit there. I needed to make Joseph notice me. After class, I walked over to him, swished back my hair, and in my cutest voice said, "Hey, great class, but there are a few points I'm struggling to understand. Perhaps you could help me out?" He looked a bit awkward, but he agreed. I blabbed out a few questions about the class, and he waffled out some answers which I didn't understand. I knew I'd have to do better than this to keep his attention, so I continued to sneak into the class. One time, I pretended to fall out of my chair and feigned blacking out. I even dabbed white powder under my eyes before class so I looked extra weary. My hope was that he'd rush over to me and carry me to the infirmary. But no, some stupid other guy had taken that chance from him. Worse still, this doofus was so clumsy that as he was carrying me through the doorway, he knocked my arm against the door frame. Ouch! I bit down on my lip and kept my eyes closed. Jeez, why had my amazing plan turned into a disaster? Ugh. I opened my eyes just in time to witness the nurse coming at me with a huge needle. I screamed out, jumped off the bed, and told her I was feeling much better now. Despite my failed plan in pretending to be sick, I immediately came up with another one. One day, I punctured my own bike tire, then pretended to sadly walk my bike to the parking lot and asked Joseph to give me a lift. He shook his head, said he was too busy, then whizzed off on his motorcycle. I stood there speechless. Worse still, I had to walk my bike all the way home. Another time, I waited until it was just him and me left in class. Then, on my way past him, I dropped my books. Then I said, "Oh no! How clumsy of me," as I bent down to pick them up. Oh yeah, I was also wearing my tightest pair of jeans. I didn't think that there's any way he could resist me in those, but he didn't even help me pick my books up. Instead, he coughed to clear his voice, then said, "Can you hurry up, please? It's my lunch break, and I haven't eaten since breakfast." Typical. I was there looking sexy, and all he could think about was his stomach. I wasn't going to give up now. I hadn't attended a bunch of yawn-inducing economics lectures for nothing. So, thanks to my social media snooping, I knew Joseph's birthday was coming up. On his actual birthday, I had a class with him. Talk about fate! So, I brought him a cake and made the entire class sing happy birthday to him. Then I announced I had a special birthday surprise for him, and I sang out Louis Capaldi's Someone You Loved. The rest of the class whooped and cheered, but he just looked down at his desk. Okay, so this was getting frustrating. What did I need to do to get this guy's attention? Jeez, I tried everything already. That Friday, one of Susie's college friends was having a party, so I tagged along. I sat in the corner and moaned out to Susie how I felt like I was getting nowhere with Joseph. I just didn't get it. Whatever I did, he just didn't seem bothered. I moaned out, Susie, should I keep flirting with him? He didn't even lay an eye on me. He was such a tough guy, you know? Like an old boot. In fact, a rock had more personality than he did. Then Susie gave me a sign, but I kept saying, and maybe he was gay or something? Like, you see, he showed no interest in girls. That's when Susie hit my arm, and when I looked up, I was completely shocked. Joseph was right there looking at me. While I froze in shock, he shook his head, then stormed off. Without even thinking, I immediately stood up, rushed after him, and apologized. He ignored me and hopped onto his motorcycle, so I jumped onto the back of it and refused to move. Please, I didn't mean what I said. Please, just listen to me, I begged. In the end, he passed me a helmet and told me to put it on. I couldn't help but feel excited. I'd wanted to ride on the back of his motorcycle ever since I'd first seen a picture of him on it. OMG. Now it was actually happening! Okay, so this wasn't how I envisioned it, but still, this was amazing. And I made sure to hug my arms tightly around his waist, purely for safety purposes, of course. After about 10 minutes, he stopped at a deserted road. I thought he was going to shout at me, but instead, he turned around and smiled at me. Wow! Without the frown on his face, he looked even hotter. So, what were you saying about me earlier? He asked. Nothing. It was just a misunderstanding. That's funny, because it sounded like you thought I had no personality, and, what was it? Oh, yes, you think I'm gay. I'm sorry. You might be gay. It doesn't matter if you are. You have a great personality. Suddenly, he leaned forward and kissed me. OMG, talk about amazing! I was shocked, but so happy, even though I didn't know what was going on. As soon as he pulled away, I pulled him back so we could continue kissing. Then he said, I'm not gay, and I like to think I have a dazzling personality. I just like playing with you, but it seems like there must be a long time for you to be more mature. But it's okay. I'd train you then. Be my girlfriend. Turns out, he'd noticed me too, but he wanted to see what happened first. Also, he thought I needed to grow up a bit, as my stunts, although amusing, were a bit on the childish side. But he also found the amount of effort I went to get his attention flattering. He told me how he'd only shown up at that party as he'd overheard me talking about it at college, and he wanted to come just because of me. I don't go to his classes anymore, which gives me far more time to concentrate on my actual classes. But we are now an official couple, and I couldn't be happier. So this is the story of how I ended up with the hottest boyfriend known to mankind. My advice to you is to be bold in the pursuit of love. As if you just sit around waiting for it to drop on your doorstep, well, you'll be waiting forever. Go get him, Tiger! That's what I did, and it totally worked for me. So there's no reason why it can't work for you, too.
When I was just a little girl, someone ruined my life. And to this day, I've never forgotten it. Never in a million years did I think I'd bump into them as an adult and have the opportunity to get revenge. But that's exactly what I did. Before I dive into my story, allow me to introduce myself a bit. I'm Ellie, and I'm 25 years old. I live in San Fran, and even though I've had a pretty tough life, I'm pretty happy now, and I have the greatest job. I'm a project manager at a cool startup in Silicon Valley. I work hard, not just because I enjoy my job, but because I like being an independent kind of girl. A lot of my friends ask me why I don't just find a rich guy to take care of me, and that just drives me crazy. I mean, I chose to be single because I really don't trust guys. You see, my dad is a nasty piece of work, and so he left a pretty bad taste in my mouth when it came to how I felt about men. When I was just 5 years old, he abandoned me and my mom in LA to go live with his mistress. Even talking about it now, I feel angry. We were devastated and begged him to stay, but he left us. After that, things were horrible for me and my mom. My dad was the breadwinner and was the CEO of a company, so we'd never had to worry about a thing. But after he left, my mom struggled to find a job, and sometimes we even went to bed hungry. I remember people felt sorry for us, and one of our neighbors started leaving food parcels on our doorstep. It was very sweet of them, but humiliating too. I hated my dad for leaving us in that mess, and I hated his mistress even more for stealing him away. I vowed to never date anyone because I never wanted to end up in my mom's position. All I knew was that men hurt women, and that wasn't going to be my story. So anytime guys asked me out, I turned them down. That was until something crazy happened that changed my mind on this whole guy thing. I was feeling really ill one day, and because I lived alone, I had to go out to the grocery store to get some food. When I got back, I felt like I was about to pass out. Before I even made it inside the door, I fainted on my porch. Luckily for me, one of my neighbors saw me fainting and rushed over to help me. I'd only ever seen him a few times in passing, but when I opened my eyes, he was standing over me. I felt so grateful. He told me his name was Brian, and I couldn't believe how kind he was being. He looked after me until I'd fully recovered. He made me soup and even sat by my bed and wiped my face with a cold cloth to help get rid of my fever. The more time he spent by my side, the more I started to think maybe I'd been wrong. Maybe not all men were bad news like my dad. Maybe Brian was one of the good ones. I'm not proud of this, but I might have pretended to still be sick, just so he would keep coming to see me. Even after a week, he laughed and said to me, "Ellie, your fever is totally gone. Are you just using me now?" I could feel my face go bright red and jokingly said, "Look at me, I definitely still got a fever." I really didn't want Brian to stop visiting. Other than my mom, no one had ever been so loving towards me. There was no hiding fact that I had feelings for him. We started hanging out more. Some days I worked super late, and whenever I came home, he'd invite me over for dinner. And one night, he had set up candles and romantic music, and guys, that's when we kissed for the first time. It felt so good, and I knew there was no point fooling myself. I loved him, and he loved me too. For the next few months, we were inseparable. We spent every possible moment together. And after 6 months of dating, he asked me to meet him for lunch one day down by the waterfront. When I arrived, I couldn't believe it. He'd arranged for us to go out on a boat for a picnic. Then, when we were out in the water, looking back at the city, he turned to me and said, "Ellie, I've never met anyone like you before. I want to spend the rest of my life looking after you, my Ellie bear. Will you marry me?" Oh my God, I'm not joking. I started crying so much, I thought we were going to capsize. This was the most romantic proposal ever. Of course I said yes. I couldn't wait to spend my life with Brian, and I was already so excited to start planning our wedding. I'd always dreamt of getting married in a vineyard near Sacramento. So now all we had to do was choose a venue and of course tell our parents. Brian had met my mom, and they got on so well, but I still hadn't met his parents. They were divorced, and Brian only really saw his dad. His mom was always working, he said, and so they didn't hang out much. I told him it was important to me that I met them both, so he arranged it. I was pretty nervous, but Brian's dad was so lovely, just like him. I could see where he got his kindness from. Then it was time to meet his mom. We went to a restaurant that she chose, and when we walked in, I thought I was going to collapse. This couldn't be happening, I thought. Brian's mom was none other than Sasha, my dad's mistress from all those years ago. I felt sick, and Brian could sense something was wrong. I tried to act as normal as possible, but inside, I wanted to scream. Brian introduced us and told me his mom was the CEO of my company's rival company. Could this get any worse? I had to smile and pretend to be happy to meet her. Honestly, I felt like I was going to puke and was counting the minutes until I could run out of there. Finally, his mom said she had to get back to work, and I felt like I could breathe again. But I had questions. On the way home, I asked Brian about his mom's life, and he said she divorced his dad 20 years ago when he was just 7 years old. She'd moved in with another guy, which I knew was my dad, but they'd broken up a long time ago, he said, and she had been constantly changing boyfriends till now. I turned to Brian and I said, "Are you okay with that? If she was my mom, I wouldn't want her to be playing around like that." But Brian just said, "I don't care. All that matters is that she's a good mom. As for her private life, she can do whatever she likes, right?" I couldn't believe it. How could Brian be such a good son? His mom had abandoned him, and he was just fine with it. I would never forgive my dad and his mistress for destroying me and my mom's life. And now I decided it was time for revenge. She'd made my childhood a living hell, and now it was her turn to know what it felt like. With planning the wedding, we started to see his mom, Sasha, more often, and I used these opportunities to try and get closer to her. Then one day I started complaining about my job, even though I loved it, and Sasha said, "Why don't you come work for me? There's a vacancy going, and you'd be perfect for it. I mean, you have so much experience." This was exactly what I wanted. Now I could ruin her company and then watch her life crumble. Everyone was surprised I was quitting my job to work for our rival company, but I didn't even have time to care about what they thought. On the first day at my new job, Sasha introduced me to everyone in the software design department, and that's when I met Clark, the head of the department. He was a little older than me, around 30, and he was well known in Silicon Valley for being super smart. The department was about to launch a new app that would blow people's minds, and everyone was super excited about it. Throughout my first day there, I couldn't help but notice how much attention Sasha was paying to Clark. It was kind of sickening to watch. She constantly flirted with him, and all I could think was how he was way too young for her. At lunch, she acted like a schoolgirl, saying, "Clarky, I saved a seat for you." I couldn't understand why Clark would like her. She continued to flirt with him over the next few weeks. She always brought him a coffee, and she didn't do that for anyone else. Then in meetings, she always chose his ideas. It was pretty frustrating, and I even thought about telling Brian that it looked like his mom had found a new boy toy. But then one day, I was working late, and when I walked past the meeting room to go to the restroom, I heard Sasha and Clark chatting, and I couldn't stop myself from eavesdropping. Sasha was giggling and said, "Oh, come on, Clark. I'll even give you a pay rise again. It's just one date." Then Clark said, "Sorry, I really can't. I'm too busy, and to be honest, I didn't have that kind of feeling for you. I'm so sorry." Ha! It made me so pleased to hear Clark rejecting her. She didn't deserve a nice guy like Clark. As I walked back to my desk, I glanced into the meeting room, and I saw how upset she looked. Wow, she looked really hurt. She must have liked Clark a lot. And so, that's when my plan started to unfold. I would do to her what she'd done to my mom. I would steal the guy she loved right from under her nose.
Hi, I'm Sarah, and I'm here to tell you how my not-so-small problem changed the course of my life. When it comes to butts, well, there are lots of names for them, such as tush, behind, backside, bottom, and so on. Trust me, I've heard them all, countless times. You see, I have a big butt. In proportion to the rest of me then, well, it's undeniably massive. My mom and dad both have pretty big butts, so combine both of their genes together, and you end up with me. Ever since I was a little kid, strangers passed comments on the size of my butt. I remember being in a grocery store once, innocently looking in the candy aisle, when a woman came up to my mom and said, "Your baby, is she all right? Because her backside seems to be very big." Yeah, seriously, some people were that rude. And the older I got and the bigger my butt grew, then the worse their comments became. Teenage me, well, I had a hard time. At the time when I hit puberty, my butt became even more enormous. Then boys didn't look at my face anymore. Instead, they only seemed to notice my butt. One boy was staring at it so hard that he walked straight into his locker and gave himself a concussion. Then there were the seats at school. I mean, why did they have to be so tiny? I'd rather stand up than try to fit in them. But no choice for me. I had to literally squeeze myself onto it, then do a wiggle routine to get out of it. And in fact, whenever I tried to sit down, someone always pointed and laughed at me. Talk about awkward. This popular girl called Mary always went out of her way to tease me. One day, I was wandering down the hallways when Mary stuck her foot out and tripped me over, and then said, "No one likes you, tushy face." I looked up at her, and that's when I realized I'd had enough. I must do something to stop this. As she triumphantly walked past me, my anger flared up, and for a moment, I lost control. I rushed in and pushed her. The next moment, she fell down the stairs and lay there unconscious. I stood stunned watching her. I hadn't noticed that we were standing near the stairs. Seeing that, her group of mean girls rushed in and started to hit me. I just couldn't do anything but lay on the ground and keep my head. Then, a voice piped up at the back of the crowd. "Leave her alone. It isn't her fault that she has a big bum." It was this girl called Anita. After that, we started hanging out more, both in school and out of it. Having Anita by my side made me feel stronger, and the mean comments about my butt size didn't bother me so much anymore. My life at school got a bit better. Then one day, this rich kid at school was holding a huge senior party at his family mansion. For the first time in a long time, I felt confident enough to go. I arrived at the party wearing my cutest dress. I saw Mary with her large gang of wannabes, but I knew there'd be lots of trouble if she saw me, so I chose to avoid her. Then I spotted Thomas, the most handsome, sweetest guy I knew. I'd pretty much had a crush on him since preschool, but I'd always been too self-conscious to tell him about it. "Go and talk to him." Anita gave me a gentle nudge forward. "Go on, before Mary gets to him first." My nerves took over, so I said to her, "But what if he isn't interested?" She rolled her eyes at me. "Not gonna happen. Now go." He seemed happy to see me, and we both hung out and drank a lot. Then we snuck off upstairs to the master room. We sat on the bed, and he looked at me, like, really looked at me, then said,
"I really like you, Sarah, and I think you're the most beautiful girl in school."
I blushed. This was the sweetest thing a boy had ever said to me. Then he leaned in and kissed me. OMG, talk about amazing! We were passionately kissing when the door burst open and someone shouted, "Why are you with her?" It was a furious-looking Mary. She continued yelling at us both and even tried to hit me, but Thomas protected me. Then he took my hand and led me out of the room. Mary continued to shout mean comments at me, but I didn't care. Thomas liked me, and she just needed to deal with it. A week later, Thomas asked me out, and I said yes. Being his girlfriend was the best thing ever, as he made me feel so special. Suddenly, having a big butt didn't seem to matter. In fact, Thomas said it only added to my beauty. Then one day at school, I was sitting in class when an announcement came over the speaker. "Sarah Montgomery, please report to the principal's office right away." The principal said that Mary's parents had reported the fight between me and Mary, and I was the one who started it first. So I was expelled. I was so mad that I didn't even bother clearing up my locker. Instead, I just stormed out of there. I ended up at a different school, and I tried my best to focus on my studies. I wanted to go to college and study drama, as I loved acting, and believed my unique body shape would be a big selling point in the industry. Thomas and I continued to date. He always supported me and made me feel like I was capable of doing anything. I didn't see much of Anita anymore, but we kept in touch. One day, I was studying in a cafe when a man came over to me, passed me his business card, and told me that with a butt like mine, I could make serious money modeling. So that's how I became a photo model. Turns out, the man hadn't been lying about the money. Okay, so I wasn't an actress yet, but I earned loads. Finally, the part of my body I was so ashamed of made me super successful. I paid off all my college fees and gave my parents back all the money I'd loaned off them. A few months later, I was on a date with Thomas, and in the middle of dinner, he bent on one knee and pulled out a ring and said,
"Sarah, will you marry me and make me the happiest man alive?"
Overcome with joy, I shouted out, "Yes, yes, yes, I will marry you!" Finally, the day of our wedding arrived, and I was so excited. After everything I'd been through, I was finally going to marry my charming prince. I had the most amazing fairy tale dress and the perfect castle venue. Better still, Anita was there as my maid of honor. As I was dancing, I saw Jack, who was my drop-dead gorgeous cousin, and he just came to join my wedding party. Anita had always been looking to meet him. I was so excited and decided that tonight was the perfect time for Anita to get access to him. I went looking for her, but she wasn't on the dance floor or by the bar, so I searched upstairs. I was about to open one of the doors when I heard a male voice coming from within.
I'll try and get some money off her. Just give me a few weeks, okay?
Then I heard a girl's voice say, "But honey, we need the money now, and I don't like Sarah. She's more butt than person." Then the guy said,
You know I don't love her. I only love you.
I looked through the crack in the door and saw the two of them kissing. Then I registered who they both were. It was Thomas and Anita. My new husband was kissing my best friend on our wedding day. Angrily, I ran into the room and threw my shoe at Thomas's head. Unfortunately, he ducked in time. Seeing me, Anita was extremely terrified and immediately ran out of the room, leaving just me and Thomas there. I shouted at him, "You're a jerk! Anything to say, huh?" Thomas looked at me in panic and confessed to me all. So Thomas told me how he'd liked me back in school, but over time, his feelings for me changed, and he found himself falling for Anita. He was going to break up with me, but then I ended up being successful. Seeing as he'd been the one supporting me, he thought it was only fair that he got a share of my money. So him and Anita constructed this whole wedding plan to take half of my money. I was so shocked. I had to sit on the ground. My heart felt like it was shattering in my chest. Then I opened my mouth and screamed at the top of my voice. I ran out of that place crying, and the wedding was canceled. I'm not gonna lie, it's been hard. Being betrayed by the man I loved and my best friend was painful. I shed a lot of tears over them, but I refused to shed any more. Turns out, Thomas wasn't the man for me, but I believe that my perfect man is out there somewhere. My backside may be exceptionally large, but I'm still a real person with real feelings. I only wish the world was more understanding, but for now, I'm using my butt to progress in my career, and I have a feeling I'm gonna be just fine. Always be you, and never let anyone take away your shine. If you try so hard to fit in and be normal, then you'll never find out how truly amazing you are and how you were born to stand out. Hi again, it's me, Amanda. In the first part of my story, my mom went to prison, and I ended up in an orphanage. 2 families attempted to adopt me, but both failed miserably. And then third time lucky, I met James. He adopted me, and we hit it off immediately. But then I started to develop inappropriate feelings for him. Everything was going great until Rosa, the new neighbor, turned up and started flirting with him. Now I'm jealous, and I need to find a way to tell James how I feel. I couldn't take it anymore, so I went to my best friend Juana's house. She'd been my best friend ever since I'd ended up in the orphanage, and now she lived with her adoptive parents just 2 streets from my house. I told Juana how I was feeling about James, and how I thought maybe he felt the same about me, but then I explained how Rosa was getting in between us now. She was so supportive, and said I should tell him soon before anything happened between him and Rosa. I had been so nervous about telling him, but after she encouraged me, I suddenly had the courage. That weekend, we were going to the park together, and I was going to tell him then. I ended up staying quite late at Juana's house. We had dinner together and even drank some wine. By the time I got home, I was feeling a little tipsy. I was excited to see James, but I couldn't find him anywhere. I thought maybe he was working late, so I went to my room to lie down. As I went to close my curtains, I saw something outside. It was James, and he wasn't alone. He was with Rosa. I kept watching them, and suddenly, Rosa got really close to him and gave him a kiss on the cheek. I felt like I was going to explode with jealousy. Did James like her? I had to do something. I knew I wasn't thinking straight because I was kind of drunk, but I couldn't just stand there and watch that woman steal him away from me. I saw him heading towards our house, so I stumbled down the stairs and ran to the front door. He opened the door, and I was ready. I rushed to grab him and started kissing him like mad. At first, he just froze. He didn't kiss me back. Then suddenly, he pushed me away and started shouting at me.
Amanda, what do you think you're doing? I'm your adoptive dad.
He said. I couldn't believe he was saying this. I said to him, but James, I thought you felt the same way. You've been so nice to me. I just like you so much. In fact, I think I'm in love with you, and I know you feel the same. James looked like his eyes were going to pop out of his head. He started walking away from me and said,
No, stop this. You've got it all wrong. I love you like a father loves his daughter.
I didn't believe him, though. I ran straight over to him and started kissing him harder. Then I ran my hands down his shirt and tried to undo some of his buttons. But then I felt a strong slap on my cheek that made me so dizzy, I almost fell down. I looked at James in shock. Had he really just hit me? He looked shocked too, and immediately apologized and said he was sorry. He reached out to touch my cheek, where his hand had left a massive red mark, but I moved away from him. He wasn't the kind of man to do this kind of thing. This was all because of Rosa. I knew it. I burst into tears and ran out of the house. I didn't even know where I was going. I just kept walking, and subconsciously, my feet led me to the orphanage. I went inside, even though it was late, and the woman working there came running up to me to check if I was okay. I burst into tears as soon as I saw them, and just stood there letting them hug me. They asked me if something bad had happened, but I couldn't even talk. I just cried and cried. That night, I slept at the orphanage and thought about everything that had happened since leaving there. I felt so awkward about what I'd done. Maybe it had been wrong to kiss James like that? The next morning, I woke up and said goodbye to the women at the orphanage. I decided it was time to head home and apologize for what I'd done the night before. But when I got home, the house was empty. In the living room, I found a note from James next to a photo of my mom and me. I could not believe what I was reading. James wrote,
Amanda, there's something I need to tell you. I knew your mom. In fact, we used to date. I didn't know she was your mom until I found this photo of you and her in your desk drawer. I met her when we were 17, and we quickly fell in love. I was the typical goody-two-shoes kind of student, and your mom was the naughty rebel. But they say opposites attract, right? We had a passionate love affair. Then one day, your mom told me that she was pregnant. I'm sorry to admit this, but I freaked out. I asked her to get an abortion, but she refused. So I left her and went to study abroad. I've regretted it ever since. And when I got back from overseas, I tried to contact her, but I couldn't. So then I tried to forget about her and got married and started a new life.
Then I read on, and it was even more shocking. It said,
From the moment I saw you, you seemed familiar, and now I know it's because you really are my long-lost daughter. I need some space now, though, because what happened yesterday was really awkward, and I need to gather my thoughts. Please wait for me, though. I promise I'll be back soon.
I was so stunned. Is this what I had been feeling? A special bond because he was actually my dad? Oh my God! I felt so embarrassed. I'd completely misunderstood my feelings. I sat there trying to process everything I'd just read when suddenly the phone rang. It was the woman from the orphanage, and they said my mom had come to get me. What? This was too much. In one day, my whole life had been flipped upside down. I ran back to the orphanage, but my mom had already left. I couldn't believe it. Luckily, she'd left a phone number, and I called her straight away asking her to meet me at a nearby coffee shop. After so many years, my mom had changed a lot. She was so much thinner, and her face looked more gentle. We ran towards each other, and both just started hugging and crying. I was speechless. I didn't realize how much I'd missed her until we were standing there holding each other. After about 5 minutes of hugging nonstop, I remembered there was something I wanted to ask her. I showed her a photo of James, and my mom was surprised to see this. I asked her if this was my dad, and my mom looked shocked. Then she just shook her head and asked me to sit down so she could tell me their love story. She said that they'd been deeply in love, but that James was planning to go study abroad for 3 years. She didn't want him to go, so she lied about being pregnant so that he would stay. But the plan backfired, and he still went abroad. My mom was so upset that the day he left, she went to a bar and got really drunk and ended up spending the night with a stranger. She can't really remember anything from that night, except the fact that the stranger is obviously my dad, and she has no idea who he is. Wow, this day just keeps getting crazier. I won't lie, I was relieved to hear James wasn't my real dad, especially after the kiss I'd forced on him. But now, after hearing my mom speak about how much she loved James, I realized something. They still liked each other. Maybe this was why all this had happened, so that I could bring them back together. I asked my mom to come back to the house with me, and then I offered to help her find an apartment. She was nervous to be in James's house, and as soon as she was inside and saw the photos of him and his family, she started crying. But I told her about the accident, and she was so shocked. Then she saw my room and started crying again and apologized for being such a bad mom to me in the past, and that it was all because she felt like her life had ended when James had left her. As she said that, we heard footsteps behind us, and I realized James was home. The moment he saw my mom, he just froze. And then they ran into each other's arms, and it was the sweetest thing I've ever seen. I left them to catch up and went to sit outside in the garden. At least now, I didn't need to worry about Rosa, and I guess I had everything I'd ever wanted. My mom was back, and she was like a new woman, and now I had a dad too. I finally had the family I'd always dreamed about.